Hello, welcome to the 135th episode of my podcast, Currency. Um, the days of me doing this alone in my room or the apartment that I used to live in, those are maybe coming to a close. Um, it appears I may have an opportunity to shoot this podcast live. And if it goes well, then I'll just keep shooting it live after that because it's more combustible to do it live, in the words of Lorne Michaels. But it's not my fault that that's the person I heard it from, because it would have been it's a good description for a lot of things anyway. It's more combustible. Um, Combustible is like a word for, it's like being transcendent. Like the opportunity for transcendence is sort of like that. Not that things that get lit on fire, it's not like that's transcendent. Um, Fire is not like futuristic or anything. It was before we had discovered fire. I'm saying that things that are combustible, like I'm talking about opportunities and potential, you know, like combustible, the potential for something, for fire to like take down an entire house. It's just like I'm not saying that's what I want to do or anything. Um, I'm just saying like the word combustible is a good one to describe like when you have an opportunity to do something big or whatever. Um, that's what Lorne Michaels was describing. He's describing like SNL and skits that play out. Like you have the opportunity for something big and memorable to happen. And so, and SNL works kind of strangely where they always are just, I mean, they're always just propagandizing themselves. Like even in the 80s and 90s, the hosts, if they had a host that was on before, like Steve Martin, they would be like, hey, are you going to do your famous thing that's like, you're really known for doing that? The skit, like he was a mummy or something. He did a mummy song, and it was like a famous skit at one point. Steve Martin he hosted SNL, and then they'd have him back and be like, they'd bring that up, and then they bring up the number of times that he hosted. They still do that same thing today. Like it's all just like it's a snake eating its own tail or something. I mean, that's not an exactly a good description of what I'm trying to say, but it's just how it's like it's just like stuff that happened in SNL is all that they can talk about in SNL. Not that that's bad, but you look at The Office, and The Office The Office takes a lot of cues from Saturday Night Live, and they bring up a lot of they have a lot of SNL references in The Office, and Michael Scott's humor a lot of times draws from things that happen on SNL or whatever. I mean, he kind of makes fun of like whatever Night at the Roxbury or Lazy Scranton are both moments among. There's a lot of moments. Time to Make the Donuts, Michael Scott says that's from SNL. There's a lot of things that Michael Scott says that are from SNL during the course of The Office. And that's interesting coming from a guy who was repeatedly rejected by SNL. Like Steve Carell, as an actor, was repeatedly rejected by SNL. Not in, I don't know if he did an audition at any point, but like that SNL would go into Second City to pick up the best talent there, and that Steve Carell was at Second City for so long trying to get picked up by SNL. It's interesting that he ends up playing a character that kind of mocks SNL skits, being as that Michael Scott is a doofus and he really likes SNL or whatever. He's kind of, I'm saying that beyond the scope of these TV shows, the actor is, this shows how the actor is below the example of SNL, the standard that SNL set. And I don't know, I'm saying maybe they're stealing some of the humor from SNL ultimately, the timing, based on that both of these institutions, The Office and SNL, are both East Coast institutions. And I know that The Office is fictionally set on the East Coast, but all of the writers for The Office, basically all of them, and a lot of the cast, a lot of the actors as well, are from the East Coast or from Massachusetts or from the area, where SNL already has a lot of influence. SNL has more influence in the Northeast, but a lot of the writers for The Office have been inevitably influenced by SNL, but just by Northeast culture and humor, and part of that is why they set it in Pennsylvania anyway. But I'm just saying, I'm just telling you. And I wanted to bring up that my mom died recently, and I'll give a tribute for her at the end of the episode. That's the best way that I can think to talk about it, because I've thought about it, and it's difficult to do at the beginning of the episode and then like go on after that. So that's the only reason why. I'll talk about my mom for a few minutes at the end of the episode. And yes, I have the opportunity to do this podcast live, and so if it goes well when I do that, I will post that episode. If it goes poorly, I will not post that episode. But I mean, it better go well, because there's no way out. That's the only way out. I need a way out of this bedroom. I need to find my way out of this bedroom. I wanted to talk about cool people and okay people. I mean, that's something that's a pre-planned topic, unless something more in the moment comes up. In the moment it's a combustible situation. The same as that there's just like a bunch of electrons in the air that reportedly Tesla was able to gather a shit ton of electricity just by harnessing the power of electrons in the air right around him. He came up with some invention to just suck electrons out of the air to create electricity or whatever. I don't have that specific knowledge of the situation, but I'm saying how fire burns up oxygen. Oxygen is very abundant and just like all right around you. That's the way in which potentiality is combustible. The way that fire burns up oxygen is like that it's making something, that it's recognizing something that is like so abundant and ubiquitous, like oxygen is all around us. That fire utilizes this element. Yeah, element. Oxygen. The fire utilizes this to just like burn whatever. That there's millions of electrons in the air and we're not using them or whatever. I'm talking about opportunities or like potentiality. What is the height of potentiality, or how far can you go? Can we get much higher? Kanye West. I could get a lot higher than this in terms of my celebrity. My status is not. Look, I mean, it's just. I mean, I'm not that famous as it stands now, and I wish I could use more people believing in me, but not everybody has belief for individuals. And I've said that a number of times, like on this podcast, more so than in real life, is that there are these big corporatized institutions that suck suck belief away from individuals. They're especially religions, but you could throw the U.S. government in there as well. The U.S. government is the U.S. government is getting so shitty right now. They're just kind of turning the entire nation into a giant ghetto. And yes, I would argue that Jesus is like the president of the world because we keep counting his years. 2024 years after Jesus, because people still think he's alive, and those people have convinced the world to believe that as far as the timeline of their lives are concerned. And so Jesus makes the world into a ghetto by making it that nobody can rise above him. A similar thing happens in Marion, Ohio, where Warren G. Harding is from Marion, and so everybody in Marion lives in the shadow of Warren G. Harding. He's a more recent president, and so they've put more effort forward to memorialize him in Marion. They have a giant Warren G. Harding memorial because he's from there. I don't know if I mentioned that. Warren G. Harding is from Marion, and they preserve the house that he grew up in. It's like the Warren G. Harding house is over here. They have signs for it all across the city. Just it's a reminder to you that Warren G. Harding came from here, but nobody else is as famous as that from Marion, and so everybody, and especially everybody living in the city right now, are not more famous than Warren G. Harding. They're all just in his shadow. They're not better than him. And in some senses, it turns the city into a big ghetto. And the U.S. government is turning the nation into a ghetto. You can see it. There's not a lot of hope, but especially in the regard that people don't start new businesses anymore. I don't know if it's just like a conservative climate where conservatives take over and they really do a number on belief that's given to individuals. They do a number on like, well, don't start a business because that's nonsense or that's crazy. It's not because of the conservative climate. It's because the U.S. government is at worse now than it has ever been. It's been getting worse and worse, but now it's like at a point where their regulations are so insurmountable that nobody can start a small business or whatever. It's just, we're just getting worse and worse because of, like, the problem is the U.S. government. I could talk about it for a while or whatever. It's just, like, kind of blatantly obvious. Why is the nation going to shit? It's because of the government that siphons off all of our money through taxes in a lot of different areas. Taxes us on everything, and then on top of everything finds other ways to tax us. And they siphon all of that money away. And they take a large percentage of the working class of the nation. A large percentage of workers overall are just working for the U.S. government, and the U.S. government is not moving towards anything. It's not accomplishing anything. They don't have goals because the money is always coming in. It's like the Vietnam War, but just that's what the U.S. government is for the nation, for the world. Like, they're not moving towards anything. They just have vague goal objectives and goals that they're like, yeah, we're moving towards this, but they're not actually ever going to accomplish them. Like, the U.S. government is a giant fraud. And you could go so far as to say that people that work directly for the federal government are con men, I would say. I'm somebody who has worked for the government for 7 years, and now I don't anymore. For the Department of Defense, I would say that they're, generally speaking, federal workers are like con men. And I don't know that I want to get into describing my time of the U.S. government, like, I was a low enough worker that I wasn't, like, interacting with very classified information, but I do have the information that the government operates as inefficiently as possible and only trends toward inefficiency. Uh, but they're only getting trillions and trillions more dollars in debt all the time. This should bankrupt the US dollar, you would think. And how do we overcome the US government? The quickest way I can think of is that we all should just invest in Bitcoin, because if there were more dollars in Bitcoin than there were in dollars, that would be the critical point at which we would start having to recognize Bitcoin more than dollars. Or see, we'd have to be like, now we're writing it in terms of Bitcoin instead of dollars. Like, there, I would imagine there is a point at which that happens, because right now there are so much more U.S. dollars than there are in dollars than there are in Bitcoin, that you only ever represent Bitcoin or Ethereum like in dollars. But we just need to restructure government and destroy it. Just destroy government. This is boring. I'm making a case. I'm just voting. I'm just telling you some governmental or political issues, whatever. I'm just saying, I don't know if I mentioned that my stance about the government is we should dissolve it, and all of the Congress and presidents and whatever, that's all bullshit. That's just a thin veil over whatever. There are representatives beyond them that have a lot more power. There's a lot of levels behind the level that they trot out to say, like, oh, we have control over this. That's just a media circus. As you may have gathered, that's what I think about it. I will vote for RFK Jr. or nobody. I think that not voting would be a better vote than Biden or Trump, really. And I've thought about voting for Trump because, oh, the resistance or whatever. But then I saw Donald Trump on the Logan Paul podcast recently, and it changed my mind that, like, obviously, no, I mean, something would have changed my mind regardless. It didn't have to be him appearing on the Logan Paul podcast. It's just that both Logan Paul and Donald Trump are endless propagandizers. And so, even though I like both of them, it is nauseating at some point to see their endless promotions. But RFK Jr. is more of a curveball than like Donald Trump or whatever. But not voting is good too, because that goes against the media industrial complex or whatever all that bullshit, the government, the establishment, the deep state is so horrible. I mean, it's just U.S. government is doing nothing but covering up the most horrible of things that have happened, like whatever on Epstein Island, and the government prevents us from knowing the greatest evils that are existing. They're just like parental control. It's just a police state over all of the citizens. They want us to all be stupid. They see us as stupid, and they're as like dumb. That we shouldn't. I mean, that's their entire existence, is as the government, is that they're just like parents or policemen. They're governors. They're over us. They can only be dominant, and so as a result, they can only see the American people as stupid children that need direction, need government. They need governing. Like, they don't just need advice or guidance. They need they need somebody completely over them. This idea is childish for the American people to carry out this way. It's a two-way street. That we give them all of the tax money. I don't know how we get to a point where, like, let's all make a stand and not give them our tax dollars. But, like, on a serious level, we need to strategize as how to completely destroy the state of government as it is. And, like, Because you can't say that because then they'll come for you or whatever. So just so you know, I'm not planning on killing myself. I know I've mentioned killing myself. If I die, not that I'm not famous enough that the government is going to come for me, probably, unfortunately. They're going to be like, this guy, will just let him be seen as crazy because he doesn't have enough views. Or they might be like, let's nip this in the bud, let's kill him early. Because they know how powerful I'm about to be. Because they know that the potentiality. They're like, he's talking about combustibility, that threatens us. He might be utilizing combustibility to his advantage to spread himself ubiquitously through the air. I'm talking about new levels. Like, there are levels. There are levels to this shit. And combustibility, the recognition of potentiality, would involve looking at strata at a granular, more specific, more particularized level. Very many different strata, very many different levels. Like, not only are there levels, there's levels within levels. Like, it's a new level to recognize. You're not being specific enough saying levels. Strata. There's stratum. Strata has got to be plural for what? Like stratus? One stratus? Or one strata? Is it one stratus that gets pluralized to strata? Is the question I have right now. Because if it's one stratum would be pluralized to one strata, two strata. One strata. One strata, two strata, red strata, blue strata. It's what my grandfather said to me when he gave me the bullet that was lodged in his shoulder after getting shot in World War Z. He's harnessing the power of combustibility. We need to nip this in the bud, said the U.S. government. But I'm saying, like, not too many people actually get on and they're like, no, let's dissolve the U.S. government. I don't know. Obviously, this is a monumental task, but they're not doing anything for every military operation that they're carrying out in the world is like the Vietnam War. Since the Vietnam War, that's basically how they've all played out, or whatever. Like Iraq, the way that ended. Like, we had some reason for being over there. We had some vague goals to be like, we're going to we're going to Americanize the Arabs in this area, in Iraq specifically. Like that's the country we chose kind of randomly, or whatever. Iraq and Afghanistan. It didn't have to be Iraq, but like, we're gonna make it American culture because that's better for them, and it doesn't work out because their culture has already been there for however many thousands, been developing on its own for 2,000s of years, and they don't have the Native American basis that we do. Like, we develop so differently. We had to kill, like, they didn't kill a bunch of Native American. I mean, they did, really. Whoever is in the Middle East now, think of how many native Middle Easterners that they killed to get to where they are. To have land in the Middle East at this point, given all of the civilizations that have risen and fallen, all of the wars and deaths, all of that oil. Oil is a fossil fuel, unless that's a myth. I think that unless it's a myth, or the Middle East is so abundant in oil because there's been so many, because it's the Fertile Crescent, because there's been so much fertility and so much life that have come and died in that area and then got buried, and then fuel results because oil is a fossil fuel as a result of all of the dead and decaying whatever that's over there, because there's been so much life and civilization in that area, produces all that oil. Think of how many Native Americans, so to speak, Native Arabs, that the Middle Easterners of today have killed to own that land. Is a lot more than like we. It's probably like Americans get so much shit for it because there's one group of people we can point to. If the Middle East, they had to destroy the native Amorites and Babylonians and Assyrians all in that fucking place, besides so many others, the Persians. I mean, you talk about the Persians, you talk about the Ammonites, you talk about the Perizzites, and that is what it is. It's not. I'm not saying parasite as a joke. They're called the Perizzites, the Canaanites, but the Canaanites is just a general term for pagans in the area that weren't Jewish. And they worshipped, who'd they worship? They worshipped Baal. And then Balenciaga is a famous company. Now it's, I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I don't know its relationship to other luxury brands like Gucci or whatever. I don't know where Balenciaga falls. My vague impression is that they make a lot of different items. But Balenciaga, if you translate it into English, that phrase is Baal is the true God. And so Balenciaga is an example of how gods never go away. Empires, civilizations that died, they never go away. Like the same way that all men of today think about the Roman Empire all the time or whatever. Like that trend or that thing was brought up recently, maybe like a year ago. It was really big, where it was like a trend to ask a man how much they think of the Roman Empire, and the answer is that all men think about it to vary at different rates or whatever. Or like that's something we found out. The spirit of an empire or a civilization never like really goes away. For some civilizations, they weren't as powerful, they go away more quickly, or like the memory of it doesn't last as long. But I mean, I think it has to do with history, that we're putting everything in one story, that when you have something as big as a civilization, the memory of it, it's hard for it to fade, especially if it gets recognized by history at all. The civilization is like an individual, and as an individual gets recognized at so much higher a level than just a person would. But the Roman Empire, the Babylonians, so I mean, just that Americans really only, we're like, oh, the Native Americans, we can point to one thing. America just loves to guilt itself. Loves to guilt itself or blame itself for everything. I mean, we're the police of the world. We have the most military installations across the world, keeping watch over them, and we just have vague. It's just that none of these military installations are doing shit for the communities that they're in the countries of. As far as I know, I haven't been there, but like I haven't been to any of these. But just look at the Vietnam War. I mean, it's not. I'm just saying, like, it's not gonna get better than the Vietnam War. Not that it's like because the Vietnam War happened, we will only ever be worse than that. It's just like the country has only gotten shittier from the 60s. The government has definitely gotten shittier. The US dollar has gotten much less in value since the 60s and has only gone down in value for the last century. There's no reason to think that the dollar will stop inflating over time. It might have periods where it stops inflating, deflates, but over the next 100 years, I'd say you'd be crazy to think the dollar, like you would be insane to think in 100 years the dollar will so much as retain its purchasing power that it has right now. It won't. It's only going to get worse. For this reason, take your money out of dollars, put it into cryptocurrencies that are like, you're investing in a cryptocurrency that's like investing in the internet, but actually investing in a newer internet that is just for banking, an internet that liquefies money in the same way that the internet liquefies information. It makes it ubiquitous for everybody. There's this new version of the internet that is just the cryptocurrency internet, and its aim. I mean, the end result, if everybody was putting a bunch of money into it, the end game of cryptocurrency is it makes money ubiquitous. It transforms it that banking is controlled at the individual level. The individual becomes the governor over the banking system, which currently it is so much not that, because all of the individuals or in the world, or just US citizens, for example, all of the US citizens are so beholden to the government of the banking system that they govern us so much. Money governs us in the world. Yes, we're beholden to money. Money is above us, but cryptocurrency makes it that we are above money, the same way that we used to be beholden to information. You'd have to go to like a university or whatever. For the people who had all of the knowledge about smartness and science, you'd have to go to a library, read a book or whatever. You'd have to read 1,000 books to be somebody who was knowledgeable. Now it's not the case. That now the individual is over information. They govern it. Cryptocurrency will do that with money, to the point that it's like, I mean, I don't know how it'll work. It'll just make money more accessible for any one person, or something like that. But mainly invest in it because we need to destroy the idea of the nation of America. It was great while it lasted. Really, like patriotism. It was awesome, all of that, ways that we identified ourselves through like that idea of America. Like, maybe patriotism died with 2001, with 9/11. Because people are always like, this died with 9/11. People are like, the 90s ended on 9/11. The 90s ended on January 1st, 2000. It doesn't have anything to do with the 90s. But, or people are like, something ended because they had to ramp up security at that point. I think patriotism ended, ultimately. And we need to embrace that rather than try to go back to that time and say it didn't happen or we did it to ourselves. The Arabs did it to us. The Arabs destroyed the shit out of our shittily made buildings. And we're like, we did it. It was us. Like, America only ever takes the blame. That's what it is. It's the same with, oh, we're the country that killed all of the natives before us. We're the shitty country. Oh, we're so bad. We need to be blamed. It's just their obsession with being the responsible one, being the police of the world, being the most noteworthy country, getting the most attention, whatever. Like, oh, blame us. It's controlling the narrative. It has to do with Christian presence in the nation, Christianity. Christian presence, and by that I mean Christianity. The collection of Christians. The Christian collection, the Christian collective. The collection of Christians assembled into the Christian collective known as Christianity, Christian churches, compose, Christianity. Mormonism is the first one that comes to mind, even though apparently it's disputed that Mormons are Christians, even though they are, but they're just in the Reformationist category of Christianity. It's a new category that they invented to accommodate the Mormons. So we're like, oh, yeah, the Mormons do follow Christ, and so we need to take into account that they do, and then we need to make sure that, it is known that in some way that needs to be spread to the rest of the world. It needs to be proliferated. That Mormons do, in fact, follow Christ, because they do, they're Christ followers, but then it's kind of, they're really trolling Christians by being so, having such a silly religion, but also following Christ. It's hilarious, the act that they put on, and it does not abnegate them from Christianity just because the act is silly. hug a Mormon. Kiss me, I'm Mormon. Find a Mormon and kiss the cook, you know. Find a Mormon and kiss the cook. And by that I mean James Cook. I don't know who that is. That's just a word, that's just a phrase that comes to mind. Let Russ cook, you know. Let Mormons cook. And, you know, and their cooking does involve following Christ, whether you like it or not. A lot of other shit, too. Mormons, the followers of Christ known as Mormons, the Mormon. But they're not Protestant and they're not Catholic. I guess there's a different category called Reformationist, if I remember that correctly. That goes to the Mormons, but they're Christians because they follow Christ. Christians are just Christ followers. But anyways, what I was saying is Christianity is narrative controlling. This makes America, besides that they have the reserve pop culture, and by that I mean the most influential pop culture. And so what that means is that they influence popularity. But I mean, just look at our elections. The elections are dependent on this big popularity contest, but they're like the most important elections in the world, according to us. But we propagandize ourselves more than any other country in the world because we're the media capital of the world. It has to do with New York City. It has to do with the word new is in New York, and every major news headquarters is headquartered in New York. Fox, ABC, CBS, ABC are all headquartered in New York. ABC is in both coasts. But it's not just those. Most of their news affiliates are also headquartered in New York. CBS News, Fox News, additionally to Fox and CBS. The New York Times. It's the news capital of the world, media capital of the world. And, oh, what do you know? A few months into the pandemic, New York City becomes the epicenter of the pandemic. Oh, wow, that storyline. It's just like, who saw that coming? I mean, that's just the thing that to me sort of exposed that something was going on, is that America was again putting itself at the center, propagandizing itself to be the most special. It's like the pandemic comes along and we're like, oh, we own the pandemic too. Like we're the best at that. So America is just like promoting, oh, we have the most deaths. Very early on, we have so many more deaths than number 2 country. Has to do with we're the media, whatever. We're the pop culture propagandizers of the world. Like everything is a TV show. Everything is a TV show for us. We're the attention. But we take the most blame no matter what. Like we have all the military installations so that people know, hey, we're in your backyard. By the way, like America puts their stamp on your country. We go into your country and do whatever with our military installation. You don't have a military installation in the U.S. The U.S. has like 30 billion. I mean, they have like however many, 100 military installations just in the U.S. that are the same military that's like in all these other countries. Like we're just kind of being in the U.S. is like being in the world or something. Like there's another one out in the world. Like that's the United States is everywhere, and that's what we do. We're like because we take the most blame, but it has to do with like not only do we have the pop culture that begets. Like, the stand-up comedy is so much bigger in America than the rest of the world. The rest of the world is so far behind in stand-up comedy. The rest of the world, generally speaking, for a lot of years has been far behind in movies. They've caught up quite a bit recently. I would be justified in acknowledging that, like, in terms of movies, but, like, entertainment generally... America is the most influential entertainment country in the world, but it has to do with that we have the most popular religion, and that religion is Christians. They're narrative controllers, and controlling the narrative is also in line with being responsible for taking blame, making the story about you. We make the story about us. We also have the religion that day by day, year by year, always makes the narrative the story about itself. And then there's all these ties with Christianity and America. And then there was a debate when things were more liberal in this country between, especially between like 2008 to 2020, where Christians are like, we should disassociate from nationalism because it's not Christian to be American. And but recently, conservatives take back over. we're like, oh, we have the power again. They're like, yeah, it is American Christian. It is American to be Christian and Christian to be American. Like, America is part of Jesus' story or whatever. America is Christ. Christ started America, or it's like Christ was a part of it, according to the Christians. According to but there, it's just like, I'm just making the point that controlling the narrative. The stories about us, we're the media capital of the world, New York City. That new is in the title helps them out because they have the authority over what is new, allegedly, by title. And that's something I say as somebody who believes strongly in the literal power of words, the power of literal words. The literal power of words. No, literally the power of words, like literally. Literally the power. Words do have power, literally. They have borders around. Each word has a border around itself, like a cell wall that defines it, that gives it its definition, its depiction, so to speak, its form, its definition, its shape, forms it. Each word has a definition, and that specific definition, the territory, is a territory with specific borders that identifies it to be a specific shape, as if it was a geographic location. Like same way that a very identifying feature of Mexico is just like the shape of Mexico on a map. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen Australia, but I've never been there, that it's like, it's not working, whatever they're doing. Stop showing me Australia. It's like an Outback Steakhouse commercial comes on and it's like, oh God, there's Australia again. Oh God, save me from having to see that shape and that form. I'm saying, during the course of my life, I've seen Australia thousands of times. I've never been there. Whatever they're doing, it's like, I don't have a relationship with Australia. I know that it's in the same world as me, but it's like, we're not as connected as it is portrayed, maybe. Stop stop acting like this is the truth. Like, oh yeah, Australia's in our backyard. Outback Steakhouse is not Australia. It doesn't even make me spiteful. Like, I'm not going to Australia now because they showed it to me so many times. It doesn't make me anything more than apathetic. Besides this speech that I'm giving about it right now. Like, just stop showing me Australia. I haven't been there. I don't think I'm going there. At this pace, I will never make it there. And it's not... But it's funny, the stereotypes that's all that you have as somebody who has never been there. But even if you were there as a tourist, you wouldn't get much further. You wouldn't get that far past the stereotypes, probably. You would see some other layer of Australia deeper than what other people see. But if you're only there for a few days. But I'm the kind of person that I like to go to, like, if I'm in a city for a week, I like to talk about it afterward. Like, yeah, I've been there and this is what the people are like there. This is what it is. Because I'm a con man. My last name is Connor, and these are topics I was going to cover more at length, but luckily I found something else to talk about today. But anyways, I'm trying to tape this live at a bar. The bar is called, and so I guess I will promote it if you made it this far in. Even though it's a trial run, I didn't want to promote it because I'm like, don't know if it'll go well, but it'll be, I believe, starting at 5 or a few minutes before 5 p.m. at the Crescent Lounge in Columbus, Ohio. I'll be taping this podcast, an episode of it. I'll be trying to do an hour. I will be doing an hour, not trying to do it. I just recently, so that's my promotion. That's what's going on. And so I will try to combust the air in there, but not in a fiery way. I mean, not in a way that actually produces fire, because that would be dangerous. And so Just trying to harness potentiality and all of that, and take advantage of opportunities. So much of life is about showing up, and and then since I arrived, and then but so I mean, it's just so much of the life about it is just about doing it. But trying is something that has I've been thinking about recently. It's a debate I'm having. I don't know if trying is a good thing to say because I believe in the literal power of words, right? And so I get superstitious about words, probably more than another person would, because I'm taking words so seriously and so literally often. Um, but like I know when somebody's being sarcastic is the thing also. So I'm like, I will shut my brain off, or I mean, I'll be like, they're being sarcastic. Just believe me. I mean, I do know. I know when you're being sarcastic. You're not going to pull one over on me. It's not exactly like that. There's a number of people that it's like, their sarcasm, I don't get it. But I wouldn't call that sarcasm. I would just call that a blind spot of mine. I am able to uproot any form of sarcasm because I'm like the king of sarcasm. Of course, but it's just that like I mean, of course these are things that we know, these are foundational beliefs that we've already moved on from or whatever. That I'm the king of sarcasm but the thing is that I guess it's like there's sarcasm that people have that I don't detect. But it's not exact. Those are just like those people are cheating. They're not being sarcastic. They're just lying to me. So that sounds funny to me to say that. I'm sorry that I showed emotion. I'm sorry that I wanted to laugh. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry that I wanted to laugh right now. Yeah, I'm sorry that I wanted to laugh. What you know about it, what you wanna, where you coming from, hey, what angle were you watching it from, he, he, E, the letter E, the letter E, E. I didn't need to do that. And by that I mean put my hand up to my face, let's say it like it's a secret to the microphone, which is for the people who aren't viewing the video. It was, regardless of if you heard it or you saw it, it was me singing the letter E. But it's not only a tribute to the letter E, it's a tribute to the sound. It's like the sound that it makes as a long E is the letter that it is. Welcome to kindergarten. And so, and then anyway, and then, then anyway, so it's just that, the word try, I don't know if I'm supposed to say try or not, because I'm superstitious about words. Like, should I forego saying try and just do it? Or should I not be speaking of it in terms of trying ever? Or is that fine? I believe that it's perfectly fine to mention your things you're trying to do in terms of you're trying to do them. I think it's fine because this just recognizes a specific a relative truth of like, yeah, relatively I'm going at it. Or is it better to just steamroll over it and be like, I'm doing it? I don't think so. Maybe it's just I'm not that kind of person. Maybe I talk about try too much. Like I'm gonna try to do it. But as Charlie Sheen once famously said, the Nike logo doesn't say just do it, just try it. The Nike logo isn't just try it, it's just do it. Just try it. because it's better, right, to just do it than to just try it. Then so that's a funny thing that he said. Charles Sheen. In conclusion, the United States government is just a giant police state, and all of we're just like supposed to listen to them, and then the media are like their Gestapo. The media, they're SS officers. I don't know what the difference is, or if those are the same thing, Gestapo and SS. The people doing their bidding, they're cronies. The media are the deep state's cronies. I mean, they carry out the sickness that is initiated by the U.S. government. They make this country sick. I mean, look at the nation. But Warren G. Harding overshadowing everybody in Marion, Ohio, just by being there, just by in a similar way to like Christ overshadows the world. Like, you're not going to rise above that. So is the point that I was making. You're not going to come out of Marion and rise above Warren G. Harding. It's interesting how being a president is so revered in that way. It's like so insurmountable in terms of prestige. But what's interesting is I've been to Delaware, Ohio, and then there's a president who came from there as well. But he's an older president. I forget who it is. Washington Adams, Jefferson Madison, Monroe Adams, Jefferson Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler, Polk, Taylor, Fillmore, Pierce, Buchanan, Lincoln, Johnson, Grant, Hayes. I think it's Hayes. I think Rutherford B. Hayes would be my guess, is someone from Delaware. But because he's an older president, they don't promote it as much. But it might have something to do with that. The Ohio Wesleyan University is in the center of Delaware and basically dominates the city. And maybe like the Christian presence of that university makes it that's the most important thing, and somehow overshadows Hayes, because Marion doesn't have a Christian university. Now, these are unfounded conspiracy theories, but I'm just trying to understand. I'm just pointing to a thing about capitals. Like, even in your local city, you have this thing about like the capital. Like, it's not just the capital of the nation or the capital of the state, but it's like every state has to have a capital. Every nation has to have a capital. Why? Also, but if you go all the way to the top, the world czar, there's like theoretically there's a world czar behind the veils of government, congressmen and whatever, government officials that you see. Then there's another layer of elected officials that we're starting to see, the globalists and whatever. We like the Charles Schwab, whatever. They're beyond the elected officials of like the U.S. government or national governments. There's the world officials, but even beyond the world officials, there's this other layer if you kept going. And then at the top of it, there's one guy theoretically that runs it all. He's the world czar. I don't think that is what it is. I think that if there's a world czar, it's Jesus. He's like the capital that turns the world into a ghetto. I would have to take some time to explain these ideas, but like I'm talking about capitals and how every state has to have a capital. It's almost like at the city level, there's something that a lot of times is dominating the town that you could point to as like turning the town into a ghetto. And not to speak of it so like harshly, like, oh, it's all ghettos. But, well, I don't know. That's not to say that somebody couldn't rise above any of these. Somebody could be better than Warren G. Harding. But what results is like he just kind of overshadows everybody in terms of fame in the city of Marion. But they wouldn't be like, oh, yeah, we're trying to overcome Warren G. Harding. It's just that like that's how the city identifies itself. That's like the character that comes across as far as the nation would be concerned. Like what's the most concerning thing to the nation about Marion, Ohio is Warren G. Harding. Probably. As far as like nationwide fame. I'm saying the capital within a city oftentimes can just be a person. And then, so you look at that Columbus, Ohio is the capital. It's the capital of Ohio, but it's also named after a person who's like the most important figure in the Western Hemisphere, or one of them. Like one of the top, I don't know, you say top three, top five most important figures in all of North America, North American history, because the Native Americans didn't produce any of those top five. Like, who's the most important famous Native American in North American history is Powhatan or Squanto. And what did Squanto do? I mean, like, seriously. He's like gave us corn, or gave us some corn. He spoke a few languages. Like, Squanto's the best you had to offer. Maybe like Montezuma, I believe, was the Aztec president when Hernando Cortez came on over here. Did his little shimmy shake up the into the bowels of Aztec country, and then just kind of like went in there and commandeered the entire empire in like a few weeks or whatever. So much different, the transformation that happened in Mexico than the one in America. Look into it. It's pretty insane. Pretty insane. The differences between European takeover of Mexico versus European takeover of the United States. Look it up. But so not to be. My mom died a couple weeks ago, and so I've had enough time to process it that this isn't that or whatever, like, that I'm not being completely serious about it or whatever, but I just wanted to talk about her for a few minutes. Like, I loved my mom, and she was a really natural kind of person. She liked. So I just would like to state factual sort of things about her, just like remember things about her in general, rather than like stories or whatever, just like things about her to try to share her memory. She was a memorable person, even though you wouldn't think that she would be. And I don't say that flippantly. Like, she's a simple kind of person. She's natural. She doesn't really like nonsense. She likes the mountains, and she liked mountains. She liked going out west and seeing that, and seeing deer and buffalo and antelope. She liked animals, really. She liked both cats and dogs. She liked nature. She liked going hiking. She did not like the city. She really didn't like Milwaukee at all. She would have also called Milwaukee a horrible city, even though I don't believe Donald Trump actually said that. My mom said it indirectly to herself and to her family. I mean, she didn't like being in cities, but I mean, she didn't like being in big cities. And she liked the Brewers, but not enough that like going to Milwaukee was too much a task for her, that like watching the Brewers would outweigh going to Milwaukee. Like, she hated Milwaukee more than she liked the Brewers. And that's to say that she didn't like the Brewers that much to begin with, but I'm just saying she doesn't like cities at all. She doesn't like sports really besides the Brewers. But she was a natural kind of person. I'd say that she had a big presence, but she had to keep it under wraps for people, because the world that we live in doesn't really reward a big presence or whatever. Like, she's a dominant person is what I'm saying, but you can't be like, socially you're not going to like be dominant all the time. So she just kind of like naturally controls the conversation or whatever, because she has sort of a bigger presence, but it doesn't always come through. She's like a simple person and a real person that's like will speak to the moment, rather than nonsense. Like, she's a real person, and so that's just kind of like, I would say that that's not really popular, as much as the world is like, we want people that are real. It's not popular, it's not cool to be real necessarily. Um, I'd say in this world, if you get married, you're cool generally. That's like the way that the world treats it. So she became cool when she got married. Um, she made it over to the other side. She wasn't a cool person naturally, though. She was just because she's too direct or she's too candid. And I'd say that that doesn't make you cool if you're just like directly speaking to a situation. But she became cool, though, just based on the way that it's defined. And, um, like, she took me, we went on, she gave me and my sister a great childhood, and we went on um, all kinds of vacations when I was a kid. Like, we went out west a lot. And she was a dominant person, and that came through in that she loved being a mom, first and foremost. She loved identifying as a mom, and moms are dominant, they're over their kids. And so, like, that's something that she was really all about is like being a mom and family and like Christianity. I mean, her relatives and the kids that her nieces and nephews are having, and her grandkids, my sister's kids. She loved family, and she would she would talk to me about in our in her in recent years, like her last few years, she would talk to me about my relatives that are having babies or whatever. She'd talk about babies a lot just to try to let me know what was important. She's just trying to push me in the right direction to have babies, you know. And because she was all about that. She's a dominant person, but being a mom, identifying as that allows her to express the like dominant qualities. She's kind of like the dominant one in our family that would get the final say in the vacation. So it's like we'd end up in nature again, like or up in Hayward, Wisconsin, or whatever, like up north Wisconsin, like we're back in the woods again, you know, because Cheryl wanted to see deer or whatever. Um, but I mean, we saw all kinds of great things. Um, but like in the respect that she was, but I just wanted to use this platform to say a few things about her. Like, she was a memorable person. She was, even though she was simple, like it's hard to describe. And I mean, I'm talking about it maybe like a not emotional so sort of way, only because this it would be silly for me to like, in my opinion, to get like really emotional for my podcasting audience. It seems like crass to me, so that's why I'm talking about it in just kind of this sort of direct sort of way. But I'm like my mom in that regard. At least in that regard, I'm like her, where I'm kind of more a real person where or like a more talk about things directly or whatever. And my mom didn't, she hated jewelry or whatever. She like think that liking jewelry was dumb, like the attention or like the spotlight of it. She didn't like that, like drawing attention to yourself, even though in some senses she liked to promote herself through her stories about her friends and stuff. Like she liked to be in the spotlight for her friends and family. But besides that, she probably like make fun of the spotlight, or so like I won't be able to cover the whole picture of it on here, but I just wanted to share a few things. And my mom liked Frasier. That was like one of the things she laughed at, and a lot. And I also liked Frasier, as a result of her liking it, but also I liked it on my own. But that's like one of the few things she would laugh out loud at, and she was the kind of person that she didn't laugh at very many things. So if she was laughing at something, it's like you remembered it, and you just wanted to know like what she was laughing at because she laughed at things so seldomly. So like she liked Frasier. She thought that that was funny. Um, she had a unique sense of humor. A lot of people do. I'd say that humor is unique like that. Or like a lot of the time it's person to person what the person's sense of humor is. It's like really subjective. So like my mom also had a unique sense of humor. Like kind of unconventional one. To me it always came through in um where she's like where she would draw pictures. Like her depictions of things were really funny given whatever kind of picture that thing that she was drawing. She would draw it in a funny way, just like whatever her imagination thought of it was funny when it came through. Like she was a good drawer, and also her handwriting is something that I look at now that she's gone as like the most like one of the most gut wrenching things about it is like looking at her handwriting because it reminds me of her, like the way that she draw things and through her handwriting was maybe a way that she was good at expressing herself through that. She has like really beautiful looking cursive handwriting, and she's a good drawer, and we and she loved to identify herself with the church. She worked at the church that I went to growing up, and she was a secretary there, and she really found herself there and loved um, the people there. And my pastor growing up, Pastor Dave, and his family was really important to her, and the people who led the music at the church were really important to her, and the church was important, and and her friends there were really important to her. That's how she identified herself with like the like simple things like that, straightforward things that matter, like her family and her grandkids, and she was straightforward like that, but also like a memorable, for some reason, a memorable person. She was just the greatest, and that's what I just want to say a couple things about her, and so thank you for listening to that, and talk to you all later on. Goodbye.